So this video is the summary for forward flips, and I'm also going to be going through a few common problems as well. Now, if you have watched my trick tip, you probably don't remember all the details, but I don't expect you to remember everything. Right now, you should know the basic concepts of the forward flip, and you've also been exposed to everything that I know about forward flips. So I'm not going to be going into huge detail. If you want details, go to the other video. In this video, I will teach you how I would personally practice the forward flip and what you should be thinking about in your head while you do your forward flips. And I'm also going to be going through a few common problems as well. Since I've already kind of talked about this stuff before, when you hear it a second time, it should be a little bit more familiar to you, you know? So, first things first, make sure that you could ollie over 3 or more boards if you can, and also that you're able to catch a kickflip, and that your kickflip consistency is 5 out of 10. But basically, you should be good at ollies, and you should be good at kickflips. So there's really 2 ways to learn the forward flip. The first way, which is the more safer method, which is first, try to get the forward flip rotation. And once you're good at that, try to land the forward flip. And the second method is to just go all out, which is pretty much you try to flip the trick and land it. You pretty much try to get everything in one shot. When I was learning forward flips, I did the second method because I kind of knew how to evade tricks at the time. Like, I had my hard flips, so I kind of had some experience with moving my way around the board so I wouldn't get racked or sacked by this trick. The reason why I'm introducing the first option is because I'm afraid that someone will go all out and end up racking themselves, and I would be liable, and they would scream at me, and I would cry a little bit. So, if you are unsure about evading tricks, we will go with the first option, the more safer option. So we've never done the forward flip before. What do we do first? The first thing I suggest is just trying to get the rotation of the trick. Make sure you do these while moving though. So that would be a pretty good rotation for a forward flip. Next, try to have your front foot land on the board, like this. Now, it doesn't matter where your front foot lands, as long as it lands on the board. Like, if you land here, 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 or wherever, that's fine. And the goal for practicing the rotation is to land like this 5 times out of 10. And if you have that 5 out of 10 consistency, that kind of tells me that you have a really good idea of what a good forward flip rotation feels like. So your goal for the forward flip rotation is to first try to land like this 5 out of 10 tries. So to get that forward flip rotation like that, make sure you're doing these while moving. I know I keep stressing that, I keep repeating myself, but it's true, stationary is pretty difficult. Have your back foot where you usually have it for your tricks, no big deal. Your front foot will always be angled, and I prefer that everyone start their forward flips with their front foot near the top bolts and close or lining up with the toe side edge of the board, like this. And of course, after some practice, you can try moving your front foot around to see what works best for you. Like, any of these foot positions are fine, but I prefer to have my front foot here, where my front foot is near the top bolts and my toes are almost lining up with the toe side edge of the board. Now, sometimes I may do forward flips right here too. It doesn't really matter. But I strongly recommend to have your front foot here when you do your forward flips. I believe that this is probably the most efficient place to put your front foot for a forward flip. Remember, when you are practicing the rotation, do a kick flip. There's only 3 differences on top of that. 1, pop down hard and solid, maybe even go a little bit vertical on you, just play around with that idea. 2, drag straight up the board, and 3, flick straight outwards. Those are the only things you should be thinking about when you are practicing the forward flip rotation. So that's everything I want from you guys. Now try to go outside and try to get a 5 out of 10 rotation consistency. It may not be easy, but nothing in skateboarding is that easy. So, some quick common problems regarding rotation. So one problem would be very slow rotation. You pop the board, you flick it, and you notice it not really going that fast. Now, a quick note here, this problem is a lot different from the problem of popping the board, flicking fast, and then smashing your nose into the ground. They're 2 separate problems. So the problem of just simply slow rotation. So one solution, make sure you aren't that guy, you know, the one who's trying to learn tricks that are a bit too much for him. So again, for forward flips, you want to have good ollies and you want to have good kick flips, because forward flips are like the twin brother of the kick flip. So solution number 2, make sure that you are dragging up the board. You are not just lifting your foot up and kicking it. That's not how you get a good rotation. You want to make sure that you are dragging up the board and flicking outwards. Solution 3, make sure that you pop the board hard and solid so that the board gets up in the air. So the 4th solution, which is pretty much like the 3rd one, which is pop the board vertical on you so that your nose gets pretty close to your back leg. But like I said in my original trick tip, if you have the board go vertical on you, it has a good shot of staying under you. and that may not be the best option for a novice when it comes to forward flips. So the best bet for a novice is maybe try to pop the board vertical and just, see what happens, maybe test out the waters, see if it kind of helps you out. Just play around with the idea. So for the fifth solution, which goes along with the second one, which is pretty much flick outwards, not up and not down. Like how I kind of think of it is try to get your front foot into the nose of the board. Like get your front foot and get it right in there and push it through. So another common problem that you may have is you pop the board and your nose smashes the ground. One solution is to make sure that you are flicking outwards, because if you flick down, the board's just going to do that. And the second solution, which I emphasized a lot on in the previous trick tip, is to pop the board vertical on you, where your nose is really close to your back leg. Because when I had that problem of smashing my nose into the ground, the underlying problem was because I was flicking too early. And how I got around that was I popped the board vertical, which gave me a little bit of a lag so that when I did the full forward flip, it had enough room to do it. So the third problem, you do your forward flip, but it ends up looking like a varial kickflip. And it looks really ugly. What do? First, make sure that you are dragging and flicking straight up the board. We are not doing kickflips. This is not what you want to do. You want to go straight up the board. A second solution is have your front foot fully on the board when you start your forward flips, because this will force you to hit the nose of the board. So maybe try having your front foot around here as possible foot placements to try out. Another thing that you can try to do is if dragging up the board and flicking straight out isn't really working for you, what you could also try to do is try to hit the toe set edge of the nose instead, like that, instead of going straight up. You kind of just go a little bit more of an angle near the toe set edge of the board and see if you get any success out of that. This solution is just another method to get your front foot to go straight up if nothing is really working for you. So for another problem, you've tried my stance, but when you do it, you get no pop whatsoever. One reason for that could be because when you're popping the board, your weight moves forward as well. So right there, simple physics kicks in. If you're over here and you're trying to pop the board, you're not going to get any pop. You're too far forward to be able to pop the board the appropriate amount. So to fix this problem, make sure that your forward flip weight distribution is exactly like a kickflip weight distribution. Don't let the forward flip scare you. Because for kickflips, you don't start moving forward when you're popping the board. That doesn't work. So just like kickflips, keep your center of weight between your feet at all times. Because if you start leaning forward like this, you're gonna need a lot of force in the back end so that you can pop it back up. And popping the board like this is really, really difficult. So try to keep your weight between your feet instead. And if you are just practicing rotation, you can, if you want, lean backward when you pop the board so that the board is able to shoot forward and do the rotation. You don't have to do it that way, it's just another way to practice. So the second reason of why that could happen could be because you're jumping the gun. So what happens is you pop the board, and right when it pops, you start flicking the board, and it just does that. So you don't have enough time for the board to get into the air. So there are two ways to fix this. The first way is the most fundamental way, which is just do a lot of kickflips and get a feel for timing, like how you drag up the board, when you flick out and everything. Because if you know kickflips, then I'm pretty sure that you aren't jumping the gun with kickflips. So when you observe your timing with kickflips, use that timing for your forward flips. So pretty much just do a bunch of kickflips, get a feel of when you flick out, and use that timing for your forward flip. Because the timing for kickflips and forward flips when you flick out are pretty similar to each other. So another way to solve this problem, which I've mentioned in the previous video, is to try to pop the board vertical on you so that your nose gets pretty close to your back leg. So this pretty much serves as a marker of when to flick the board. Because when I pop the board, I realize right here, this is too early. So if I wait for the board to get a little bit higher, this is when I flick the board. And at this point, the board is already up to here, so you have enough room for the board to rotate. So there's one little thing that I recommend. One problem with forward flips is that they are very similar to kickflips. Now why that is a problem is that since they're very similar in technique, your forward flip technique could override your kickflip technique. So what I suggest that you do is at the end of your sessions, just do a few good, healthy kickflips so that your kickflips and forward flip technique are separate from each other. So if that ever happens where your kickflips start to end up a little janky because of practicing forward flips too much, just put the forward flip on the back burner and work on your kickflips and just get them back together, and then work on forward flips. So tricks overriding other tricks happens a lot in skateboarding. It happens to me many times as well. So what you do is just relax, know that this is natural, that sometimes tricks can interfere with each other. So if you're having problems with kickflips because of your forward flips, then it's not a huge deal. Just return to your kickflips, get them back. It's not going to take too much time to get them back because you've already learned kickflips before. So this is just a minor nuisance. Just remember that all that stuff is natural. Tricks sometimes interfere with each other, and the way to counter that is just be good with the tricks that you do. The reason why my kickflips are never interfered is because I know my kickflips inside and out. I know how to do them correctly. I can do them like 100%. They're easy to do. If you have tricks like that that are really easy to do and you have them 100% like that, then those tricks will probably never get overridden by other tricks. If they do, that means that they weren't actually 100%. You had some problems with them before. So again, keep your forward flip technique for your forward flips and your kickflip technique for your kickflips. So at this point of the video, you should have your forward flip rotation somewhat consistent. So you should have a forward flip rotation consistency of maybe like 5 rotations out of 10 tries. Now at this point of the video, you aren't landing your forward flips, you're just doing the rotation and getting the board to flip correctly, and you're doing that 5 times out of 10. So along that journey that you had for consistent forward flip rotation, you probably had some bumps in the road. Like you probably had the problem of maybe your nose smashing the ground, or maybe that your forward flip rotated horizontally and it looked really bad. But you checked out my previous advice and that helped you get a better forward flip rotation consistency. If you did not have bumps in the road like that, then congratulations, you're a skateboarding savant. I wish I was you. So at this point, you should be able to identify what a good rotation feels like and what a bad and slow rotation feels like. And you know that a bad rotation rotates something like this, where it flips really slowly and then just stops at 90 degrees. This is really bad. So at this point, you should know what type of flick gives what outcome. So all I'm saying is, once you flick the board, you should know the exact outcome of your forward flip. Like once you flick the board, you should know if it's gonna flip slow or if it's gonna flick fast, because that's gonna save you if something bad happens. So right when you flick it, you should know exactly what the board is going to do. And it's actually not really difficult to predict where the forward flip will land once you flick the board, because if you do forward flip rotation enough times, you know exactly what it feels like to flip a successful forward flip. Because if you have that feeling that you didn't flick it correctly, it's not gonna rotate correctly. So now it's time to land the trick. So have the board stay under you. So remember, distribute your weight exactly like a kickflip at all times. So don't let the forward flip scare you. Your weight distribution for a forward flip is exactly like a kickflip, how my weight is right between my legs. I am not doing this. So you're going to pop the board, it's gonna rotate, and my weight just stays here where it was before throughout the entire time. If my weight ends up going like this, the board's gonna shoot out that way. Another thing you can do is try popping the board vertical on you, like I said before. This really helps keep the board under you a little bit better. And the third thing you do is, once you flick out, make sure that you tuck your legs in super tight into your body, because you know that the forward flip rotates like this. So you need a lot of height for the board to rotate like this below your feet. So tuck in those legs pretty tight, and you're going to be tucking in for a longer period of time than many tricks you know. And you are more than likely going to be ending up landing in a squat where you do not extend your legs. You just keep them tucked until you land, because doing that buys you more time in the air. So an example of landing in a crouch would be something like this. So again, if you pop the board and you flick it and you realize you flicked it kind of funny, if you are tall, stand up so that the board could pass through the legs. If you are not as tall, just kick the board away from you so that you are safe. So one thing that I want to mention for this option of learning forward flips, where first you do your forward flip rotation, and then once you get good at forward flip rotation, then you try to land the trick, is that there is one problem that, you know, a few people may stumble into. That problem is the habit of using some sort of movement to push the board away from you to get the forward flip rotation. So you may start leaning backwards so that the board could flip away from you, or if you use a lot of your foot to push the board away from you so that it goes out, so that you were able to practice the rotation. So what I mean is, when you go for the actual forward flip, it could be a little difficult getting the board to stay under you, because you practice so much with pushing the board away from you to get that foreflip rotation. So what I would recommend you do if you have this problem, which, you know, it's gonna be pretty common if you use this option, is just do a bunch of simple kickflips. Because the reason why the board is being pushed away from you all stems from weight distribution. And if you get a feel of how you normally distribute your weight for kickflips, incorporate that weight distribution with your forward flips. So what I would do is just do a bunch of kickflips and try to trick your brain into doing kickflips over and over again, and then start using your forward flip technique with that weight distribution technique that you use for kickflips, and see how that goes for you. So what you want to do is trick your brain into doing kickflips a lot, get it in the mood of doing kickflips, and then right on the spot, just try to do a forward flip and keep the weight distribution of a kickflip in there too, and see how far you get, because I think that could work pretty well. So basically, keep your weight distribution for kickflips and forward flips identical to each other. I think that should definitely help you out if you fall into that hole. So for option 2, for the people who are kind of new to forward flips and just want to get right into it and try to land it, this is actually how I learned the trick. But if you go through this route, just remember that there is a possibility of, you know, getting racked by this trick. But again, it's pretty rare to get racked by this trick. It's all about being in the wrong place in the wrong time. I personally never been racked by this trick before. So you want to go for the full forward flip. Just literally do everything I said for option 1, but do it all at once. However, you don't want to be leaning back and you don't want to throw your board forward. You want to try to keep the board under you. If you are not going to remember anything from this video, at least remember this part, because this goes for option 1 and option 2 as well. So go into your forward flip stance, make sure you're doing this while moving, and distribute your weight exactly like a kickflip. Right now, it should feel exactly like a kickflip, only that you're in a different foot placement. Next, pop the board hard and solid, and maybe try to get your nose to reach near your back leg so that it gets a little vertical on you. So once you pop the board, you will flick out exactly like a kickflip. The only thing different is that you will be dragging straight up the board, like this. And at this point, you will be kicking straight outwards. You want to visualize your front foot going into the nose of the board. You want to have your front foot go through the nose and go outwards. So once your front foot has left the board, just like kickflips, you will be tucking your legs so that both knees meet your chest. See how close my knee is to my chest? That is what you want, and do that with both knees. You will also be tucking for a longer period of time, to the point where you may be tucking throughout the entire trick. And if you feel like you flip the forward flip kind of weird, immediately throw the board away from you. So there you have it. That 30-second synopsis that I just gave you is what you should be thinking about when you're doing either the first option or the second option. If you are having problems with rotation, or not getting the board vertical, or you're not landing near the board, then take a look at option 1, because that's where I discussed those common problems. So for option 1, the good, you are less likely to get racked by this trick, but the bad is that you can form a bad habit of pushing the board forward when you do not mean to. So for the second option, the good is that you're less likely to form a bad habit of throwing the board forward, but the downside is that you could be a little bit more likely to get racked by this trick. So option 1 and option 2 are both double-edged swords, so try to choose which one that you would like to work with. And there is no right way to learn a forward flip as long as the end result is a vertical, nice forward flip. So during your journey for forward flips, one thing you could do is either go to this video or my ultimate trick tip video, browse through both of those videos whenever you want, and try to compare your forward flip technique with my forward flip technique. And try to find out where we are different. Like, what am I doing that you aren't doing? And then experiment with that. Like that whole kick into the board analogy, where you flick and kick into the nose and go out. Maybe you've never tried that before, so the next time you practice, try it out and see if you get success. You know, just watch both videos and try to find some practice ideas to incorporate for your next session. I find that when you have a lot of ideas, you have more motivation to do the trick. And when you have a lot of motivation, you practice more and more than usual. And when you practice a lot, you have a better chance of getting that trick. So that's pretty much my train of thought, is give you guys lots of ideas to try out for your next session so that every session won't be boring. Another thing you could do is look at my first person video for forward flips, because that will give you an idea of what's going on. And also remember to experiment with a lot of things, like experiment with foot placement. Like if you have your front foot back, you have more pop, but in my opinion, I feel it's a little bit hard to flick the board. And if you have your front foot more up the board, I find that it's hard to pop it, but it's easier to flick it. So maybe try out some of these foot positions to see what may work best for you. Another thing you can do is practice the timing between the pop and the flick. you know, like how I said that I prefer to pop the board a little bit more vertical so that I have more time for the board to get into the air. So that's another thing that you can practice with. So that was the summary of the foreflip and some of its common problems as well. If you have any problems or have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment box or send me a message or whatever you like to do, and I'll try to get back to you on it. And as for now, you have all the resources you need to land the foreflip. So, good luck.